There's a lot of money flowing to Georgia right now. According to Ad Impact, combined ad spending in the two Senate runoff races there January 5th has already reached a total of $283 million. We're still more than a month from Election Day. Republicans need to win at least one of the races to maintain control of the Senate, but they are depending on two very flawed candidates to try to get there. One is the appointed Senator, Kelly Loeffler, who's believed to be the richest member of Congress. She has a $10 million home and a private jet. She and her husband are worth an estimated $800 million. In January, Loeffler dumped millions of dollars in stock after a private coronavirus briefing before the general public knew the scope of the outbreak. The Senate Ethics Committee and the Justice Department both launched and then dropped investigations into those trades. Georgia's other Republican senator, David Perdue, also facing serious questions about his stock trades, including a more than $1 million sale of stock in a financial firm where he once served on the board, which the New York Times reports prompted a Justice Department inquiry. I'm joined now by the co-author of that New York Times story, Justice Department reporter Katie Benner. Also with me is Pema Levy. She's political reporter from Mother Jones, who recently co-authored a story titled Perdue and Loeffler's Well-Timed Stock Trades Give Georgia Democrats an Opening. Katie, can I start with you on the David Perdue story and sort of what we've learned over the last week or so about the trades you looked into?
Yeah, we were able to get a tremendous amount of detail into this trade. It's significant for a couple of reasons. One, because you just see how much ambient information is available to somebody this close to a company. It's one of the reasons why a lot of advocates believe that members of Congress should not hold individual stocks, especially if they've done something like been on the board of the company and benefited so richly from that company. What we saw was in January, the CEO sent David Perdue an email saying, if you intend to talk to the CFO, please know that I have not yet alerted him to the changes. It's very vague, but I think we can all agree that if you're telling somebody the CFO doesn't know about a big change, that might portend perhaps bad news.
Right.
What we then see is that from records subpoenaed by the Justice Department that Senator Perdue asked his money manager at Goldman Sachs to please sell about a fifth of his position in Cardlytics, locking in a $1.3 million thereabout profit, which this Goldman trader does, subsequently. Now, we were told by people close to the situation that Perdue and Goldman Sachs had previously discussed perhaps selling off from Cardlytics because his position had grown so big because the stock had run so high, and I have no reason not to believe that. It really is a startling series of events that really led investigators to say this was something that bore scrutiny.
Yeah, it's a very, very big trade, first of all. It's a big trade of an individual stock, second of all, right? It's not like moving it. And it's a big trade of an individual stock of a company you're intimately familiar with and have some inside access to. Like, it doesn't mean that's prima facie illegal or criminal, but those three together are going to cause some questions. Apparently they did.
Yes, of course. And again, this is why people say that members of Congress really should not hold individual stocks, because in Perdue's case, he actually was on the board of the company and he is very, very close to the CEO. Yeah. But even given the information you get in a congressional briefing, in a Senate briefing, and if you're on a banking committee, as he is, that can all have a real impact on your ability to do your job and on your ability to make money.
Now, Pema, the Perdue moving $1 million is just sort of a piker's ante compared to the amount of money that Loeffler has, whose husband is the president of New York Stock Exchange, and the two of them made a whole bunch of trades early on. Again, people, just to refresh everyone's memory, like the markets tanked before it kind of set into the general public what exactly we were dealing with in terms of, the level of this pandemic. She has been cleared, I guess, insofar as the Justice Department or Senate Ethics Committee have dropped their investigations. But again, the sort of basic facts here still don't look great politically.
Yeah, politically, they're terrible. Kelly Loeffler and her husband began selling stock immediately after she attended a senator's briefing on the coronavirus on January 24th. And then they also bought some stock. For example, they bought stock in a company that does telework software, which also seems to indicate, a pandemic is coming and about to shape the economy. So as with the case that Katie was just discussing, the Justice Department and also the Senate Ethics Committee both dropped their investigations. But But again, these things are incredibly hard to prove. And the thing about public corruption is that it's sort of like the appearance is a really big deal, and it's really hard to shake it. This really impacted Loeffler in the spring when the investigations were going on. She was in a tough primary, and it really down her. She ended up succeeding in the primary, which was actually her November election. So that's why she's now in a runoff. But these continue to haunt her campaign and have really stuck with her. I think, when it comes to Perdue, in some way, he's sort of the gift that keeps on giving because there's been so many recent revelations, including Katie's breaking story. But Loeffler is the one who's had these sort of following her the entire year, really her entire Senate career.